The space station was enormous. It floated in the darkness like a muddled flower, spinning slowly, lights blinking from 1,000 windows. Ships came and went every hour. Big ships. Beautiful ships. Ships that belonged to species who had traveled between stars for millions of years. And then there was the HSS Persistence. Captain Park Do-hyun stood at the viewport and watched his ship dock. It was small. It was ugly. It had been a mining vessel before the Earth government bought it cheap and filled it with weapons that barely worked. The paint was scratched. One of the engines made a strange sound that engineer Kwon Tae-sung promised was probably fine. But it was theirs. It was humanity's first real patrol ship. And today, they were joining the Galactic Collective. Do-hyun was 43 years old. He had gray in his hair and calm in his eyes. He had grown up on Mars, in the underground cities where people learned to be patient. You had to be patient on Mars. The air recyclers were slow. The food was limited. You waited for everything, and you learned to survive the waiting. He turned away from the window and looked at his crew. 30 people. 30 humans in uniforms that didn't quite fit, carrying equipment that was 50 years behind every other species in the galaxy. Lieutenant Yoon-ha stood closest to him. She was his tactical officer, and she was angry. She was always angry about something, but today she had a good reason. "They put us at Dock 47, she said. "That's the garbage dock. That's where they put broken ships waiting to be recycled." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "I know. They're insulting us." "Yes." Hannah waited for him to say more. A DIDN single quotes T. from the back of the group. Tae-sung laughed. He was a big man with oil stains on his fingers that never quite washed off. "Dot 47 is fine. The view is terrible, but nobody will bother us there. I can fix the engine without some alien inspector asking questions about why we're using technology from 2 centuries ago." "That's not the point," Hannah said. "No," Do-hyun agreed quietly. "But it's not worth fighting about? Save your anger, Lieutenant. We'll need it later." They walked through the station together. The corridors were wide and beautiful, made of some white material that seemed to glow from inside. Aliens of every shape passed them. Some were tall and thin, with too many arms. Some were short and covered in scales. Some floated instead of walked. Some had no bodies at all, just clouds of light that somehow thought and spoke. And all of them looked at the humans the same way, like they were children, like they were pets, like they were nothing. A group of Velroth soldiers stood near the entrance to the main plaza. They were the dominant military species in the collective. 8 feet tall, 4 arms, skin like gray stone. They wore armor that cost more than the entire Persistence. Their commander was named Rothak. He was famous. He had won battles that lasted for years. He had destroyed fleets. He had conquered worlds. And when he saw the humans walking past, he smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Humans," Rothak said loudly. His voice echoed through the corridor. Other aliens stopped to watch. The newest members of the collective. "Tell me, Captain, how does it feel to finally reach the stars? To discover that you are the smallest, weakest, most insignificant species in a galaxy full of giants?" Do-hyun stopped walking. His crew stopped behind him. He could feel their tension, their shame, their anger. He looked up at Rothak. The Velroth was 3 feet taller than him. The alien could break him in half without trying. "It feels like Tuesday," Do-hyun said. Rothak's smile faded. "What?" "Every day on Earth, we wake up knowing something bigger than us could kill us. Earthquakes, hurricanes, disease, each other." Do-hyun shrugged. "We're used to being small. We're used to being weak. We're still here." Rothak stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. Still here, the Volrath repeated. Yes, like bacteria. Like insects. You exist because the galaxy has not yet bothered to notice you. Enjoy your patrol assignment, Captain. The outer boundary is very quiet. Nothing happens there. Nothing will ever happen there. It's where we send the species we don't want to see. He walked away. His soldiers followed. Hana's hands were shaking. I want to shoot him. I know, Dohyun said. Can I shoot him? No. Just a little? Dohyun almost smiled. Almost. Later, maybe. For now, we have a job to do. They continued through the station. Nobody else spoke to them. Nobody wanted to. The humans were beneath notice, beneath contempt, beneath everything. They reached their assigned briefing room. A holographic display showed them their patrol route, the outer boundary, the edge of collective space. Millions of miles of nothing, patrolling lanes that nobody used, protecting borders that nobody threatened. It was busy work. It was an insult dressed up as an assignment. The crew sat in silence. Some of them looked defeated. Some looked angry. Dr. Biksuri, the ship's doctor, simply looked tired. She was 50 years old and had seen too much to be surprised by cruelty anymore. Navigator M. Jiang was the youngest, 24 years old. She sat in the back and tried not to cry. She had dreamed of this her whole life. Reaching the stars. Meeting other species. Being part of something bigger. She hadn't dreamed of being laughed at. Dohyun stood at the front of the room and looked at his crew. His people. His responsibility. I know what you're thinking, he said quietly. I know how you feel. They don't respect us. They don't fear us. They don't even see us as real people. We're a joke to them, nobody argued. Good, Dohyun continued. Let them think that. Let them laugh. Let them forget we exist. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Humanity has been underestimated before. When we lived in caves, the world was full of animals that could kill us. Bigger, faster, stronger. They're gone now. We're still here. When we fought each other, empires rose and fell, and everyone thought they were the end of history. They're gone now. We're still here. When we went to Mars, everyone said we'd fail. They said we were too weak, too fragile, too human. He turned back to face them. We're still here. The room was quiet. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if we'll ever be respected. I don't know if we'll ever be powerful. But I know one thing. He paused. We don't quit. We don't break. We don't give up. That's not strength. That's something else. Something those aliens with their big ships and their ancient civilizations have never had to learn. What's that? Jiang asked quietly. Dohyun looked at her. Persistence. Specialist Choi Yoonji's console suddenly beeped. She was the communications officer, a quiet woman who noticed everything and said little. Captain, she said. We're receiving a distress signal. From where? Yoonji checked her readings. Her face went pale. The Forbidden Corridor. The room went silent again. Everyone knew about the Forbidden Corridor. It was a region of dead space where ships disappeared. No one went there. No one had gone there for centuries. The collective had laws against even approaching it. The collective will handle it, Hana said. Yoonji shook her head. The signal has been broadcasting for 3 hours. No one is responding. I checked the collective emergency channels. They're ignoring it. Why? Because it's the Forbidden Corridor. They'd rather let whoever is out there die than risk sending a ship. Dohyun stared at the display showing the distress signal. A small blinking light in a sea of darkness. Someone was out there. Someone was dying. Someone was calling for help, and nobody was answering, except him. Set a course, he said quietly. Hannah looked at him. Captain, that's against collective law. We could be expelled. We could lose everything. Someone is asking for help. Dahin walked toward the door. That's all I need to know. He paused at the threshold. They said we were weak. They said we were nothing. Maybe they're right. But out there, someone is alone and afraid and dying in the dark. And we're the only ones who care enough to try. He looked back at his crew. That's not weakness. That's what makes us human. The Persistence undocked from the station 30 minutes later. It was small and ugly and outdated. Nobody watched it go. The galaxy didn't notice that it would. The Forbidden Corridor was not a place. It was an absence. A wound in space where light seemed dimmer and stars seemed farther away. The Persistence moved through it slowly, engines running at minimum power, sensors searching the darkness. Captain Park Do-hyun stood on the bridge and watched the view screen. There was nothing to see. That was the problem. Space should have been full of things. Asteroids, debris, dust. But here, there was only emptiness. This is wrong, Navigator Im Jeong whispered. She was young, but she had good instincts. Space shouldn't feel like this. Like what? Lieutenant Yoon Hana asked from her tactical station. Like something cleaned it. Nobody responded to that. Nobody wanted to think about what kind of thing could clean an entire region of space. Engineer Kwon Tae-sung was below deck, doing something to the engines that he refused to explain. Every few minutes, the ship made a strange humming sound and then stopped. Do-hyun decided not to ask about it. Specialist Choi Yoon-ji was focused on her communications board. The distress signal was getting stronger. They were close now. Very close. I have visual, Ji-young reported. Putting it on screen, the ship appeared in the darkness. It was a Karashi vessel, one of the elegant silver ships that the ancient telepaths used for scientific research. The Whisper of Stars, according to its registration. It was dead. No lights. No movement. No life signs. Try hailing them, Do-hyun ordered. Yoon-ji sent the signal. Nothing came back. We're going over there, Do-hyun said. Hannah, you're with me. Sergeant Han, bring your security team. Han Min-ho was a solid man who rarely smiled. He'd been a soldier on Earth before joining the space program. He knew how to keep people safe, and he knew how to recognize danger. Captain, he said quietly, I don't like this. Neither do I. And why are we doing it? Do-hyun looked at the dead ship floating in the void. Because someone has to. The boarding party crossed in a small shuttle. The Karashi vessel was even larger up close. Beautiful in a cold way. The airlock opened easily, which was strange. A dead ship should have locked airlocks. Security measure. Standard procedure. Unless someone wanted visitors. The interior was dark. Emergency lights flickered at random intervals, casting red shadows on the walls. The air was breathable but cold. Very cold. Life signs? Do-hyun asked. Hannah checked her scanner. None. She paused. But there are. Heat signatures. Fading. Like bodies that died recently. They moved deeper into the ship. The corridors were empty. Clean. Nothing was broken. Nothing was damaged. The ship looked perfect, except for the fact that nobody was alive. They found the first body in the medical bay. A Karashi scientist sat in a chair, eyes open, hands resting on the table in front of him. He wasn't breathing. His skin had turned gray. There were no wounds, no blood, no signs of violence. He had simply stopped living. What killed him? Min-ho asked. Dr. Beek-suri knelt beside the body and ran her medical scanner over it. Her face was unreadable. I don't know, she said finally. There's no cause of death. His heart just stopped. His brain just stopped. Everything stopped at once, like someone turned off a switch. That's impossible, Hana said. Yes, Suri agreed. It is. They found more bodies. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. All sitting in neat rows in the main gathering hall, like they were waiting for a presentation that would never come. 300 Keresi scientists, the most advanced minds of an ancient species, all dead. All sitting. All staring at nothing. Minho's hands were steady on his weapon, but his voice was not. "Captain, we need to leave." "Not yet." Do-hyun walked among the bodies, looking at their faces. They didn't look scared. They didn't look surprised. They looked peaceful, like they had accepted something. Like they had understood something at the end that frightened him more than anything else. Yoonji called from her position, near the ship's main computer. "Captain, I found something. A recording." It started broadcasting 30 seconds before everyone died. "Play it." The recording was audio only. Static at first, then a voice. Not a Karishi voice. Something else. Something that didn't sound like any species Do-hyun had ever heard. The voice said one word. Quiet. Then silence. Then death. Yoonji was pale. "There's more. I found another signal. It's been broadcasting from somewhere nearby for 10,000 years. The same message, over and over." "What message?" She played it. This time, the voice was different. Older. More tired. More afraid. "Turn back. They wake when you listen. Turn back. They wake when you listen." The warning repeated endlessly. A voice from 10,000 years ago, screaming into the darkness. Hoping someone would hear. Hoping someone would run. Dr. Suri stood up slowly. She had been studying the Koreshi bodies, and now she understood. "Captain, I know what this is. I know what happened to them. Tell me." The Karathi. She looked around at the dead. "You know the story. The Karathi Empire. They were the most powerful civilization in galactic history. 10,000 years ago, they controlled half the galaxy. Then they vanished. Overnight. Every ship. Every planet. Every person. Gone. What does that have to do with this?" The Karathi didn't vanish. Suri's voice was barely a whisper. They were silenced. Something hunted them. Something that kills anything that makes too much noise. Too much signal. Too much presence. Hannah shook her head. "That's a legend. A story to scare children." The Koreshi thought so too. Suri gestured at the bodies. "They came here to prove the legends wrong. To study the Forbidden Corridor. To show that there was nothing to fear." She paused. "They were wrong." The ship groaned. Metal shifting. Temperature changing. Something was happening outside. Jiyoung's voice came through the communicator, high and frightened. "Captain, something is moving out here. Something big. I've never seen anything like it." They ran back to the shuttle. Through the view screen, they could see it now. A shape in the darkness. Not a ship. Not an asteroid. Something else. It was black. So black that it seemed to absorb the light around it. It was long. Very long. Kilometers, maybe. It moved like a living thing, twisting and flowing through space. And as it moved, it made a sound. Not through speakers. Not through communications. Through everything. The sound was in the walls. In the air. In their bones. It was the sound of something listening. "Back to the persistence," Do-hyun ordered. Now, they crossed back to their ship in seconds. Taesim was waiting for them at the airlock, his face grim. "Captain, I shut down everything I could. We're running on minimum power. No signals. No scans. Nothing. Good. But it's not enough." Taesung pointed at the view screen. "That thing. I've been watching it. It's scanning the area, methodically, carefully. It's looking for something. Us? Maybe. Or maybe just anything. Do-hyun made a decision. All hands, silent running. No communications. No movement. No noise. Everyone find a place to sit and stay there. We wait. The crew obeyed. 30 humans sat in the darkness and watched the monster move past. It took 6 hours. 6 hours of silence. 6 hours of barely breathing. 6 hours of watching something the size of a small moon drift through space, searching for prey. Once, it came close. So close that they could see details on its surface. Not metal. Not rock. Something else. Something that looked like skin. Something that looked almost alive. EU and G saw a writing on its surface. Symbols. Letters from a language that had been dead for 10,000 years. Karathi words. Carved into the flesh of a machine god. The words said, "We tried to fight. We failed. Forgive you, sus." Then the thing passed. It moved away into the darkness, still searching, still hungry, still patient. Do-hyun let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "It didn't see us," Ji-young whispered. "Why didn't it see us?" Tae-sung laughed quietly. It was not a happy sound. "Because we're too small, too quiet, too primitive. Our ship runs on technology so old that it barely registers as technology at all. To that thing, we're not a threat. We're not even interesting. We're just noise, background radiation, nothing." He paused. For once, being weak saved us. Dawn stood and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the monster was still hunting. Somewhere out there, entire civilizations were in danger and didn't even know it. "Set a course out of the corridor," he said quietly. "We need to tell someone about this." "Tell them what?" Hannah asked. "That there's a giant monster in the Forbidden Zone. That the Karathi were killed by some kind of machine god. They won't believe us. Then we need to find proof." Do-hyun turned to face his crew. "Somewhere in this corridor, there's an answer." The Karathi knew what this thing was. They tried to warn everyone. We need to find what they left behind. The persistence moved deeper into the darkness. Behind them, the thing that had silenced 1,000 civilizations continued its endless patrol. It had not noticed. The small human ship. Not yet, but it was patient. It had been patient for 10,000 years. It could wait a little longer. The Karathi archive was hidden inside an asteroid. From outside, it looked like nothing. Just another dead rock floating in the emptiness of the Forbidden's corridor. But Specialist Choi Yoonji had found the signal. Weak, old, desperate. A beacon that had been calling for 10,000 years. Waiting for someone brave enough or stupid enough to answer. Captain Park Do-hyun decided they were both. The Persistence landed in a hidden, docking bay carved into the asteroid's heart. The doors opened automatically when they approached, recognizing the energy signature of a living ship. The Karathi had built this place to be found. They had wanted someone to come. They had wanted someone to learn. "Atmosphere is breathable," Dr. Beeksuri reported, checking her scanner. "Pressure is stable. Someone is keeping this place alive." "The power systems are still running," Engineer Kwon Tae-sung said with wonder in his voice. 10,000 years and everything still works. These people were incredible. "They're dead," Lieutenant Yoon Hana reminded him. Being incredible didn't save them. The team moved through the corridors. The walls were covered with symbols, writing, pictures. The Karathi had recorded everything. Their history, their science, their art, and at the end, their warning. The main chamber was enormous. A sphere of darkness filled with floating lights. Holographic displays waiting to be activated. The collected knowledge of a civilization that had once ruled the stars. Navigator Im Ji-young touched one of the displays. It flickered to life. A figure appeared. A Karathi. Tall, graceful, sad. The recording was 10,000 years old, but the pain in those ancient eyes was fresh. "If you are seeing this," the figure said, "then we have failed. The hollow has won. The galaxy has been silenced. And you, whoever you are the next to face extinction." The figure paused, gathered itself, continued. "My name is Vareth. I was the commander of the Karathi Grand Fleet, 50,000 ships. The greatest military force the galaxy had ever known. We thought we were invincible. The hologram changed. Images appeared. Ships, battles, fire. The hollow came from the space between galaxies. We don't know where. We don't know why. We only know what it does. It waits. It watches. It counts. When enough species reach a certain level of technology, when enough ships fill the stars, when the galaxy becomes too loud, it wakes, and it silences everything." Vareth's voice was heavy with grief. "We tried to fight. We threw everything we had at them. It wasn't enough. The hollow doesn't just absorb energy. It learns from it. Every weapon we used, it adapted to. Every strategy we tried, it countered. In 11 days, our entire fleet was gone. In 30 days, our civilization was ashes. The images showed the destruction. Planets burning, ships exploding, billions dying in silence. But we learned something," Vareth said. "The hollow has a weakness. It hunts by detecting energy signatures. FTL travel, advanced weapons, complex communications. Anything that produces a certain threshold of power draws its attention. But below that threshold, it is blind." Hannah leaned forward. "Blind to what?" As if answering, Vareth continued. "The hollow cannot see primitive species. It cannot detect simple technology. To it, anything below a certain level of advancement is invisible, irrelevant, background noise." Tazone laughed. It was a strange sound in the ancient chamber. "That's us. That's exactly us. Our ship is so old, so outdated, so primitive that the hollow doesn't even know we exist." "For now," Suri said quietly. "What happens when humanity advances? What happens when we build better ships?" The hologram flickered, changed. A new image appeared. "There are 3 hollow entities," Vareth explained. "One patrols this region, the Forbidden Corridor. It hunts anything that enters. One sleeps at the galactic core, waiting for the signal to wake, waiting for the galaxy to become loud enough." A map appeared. The galactic core, the center of everything, where the oldest civilizations lived, where the collective had its capital, where billions of ships traveled every day. "When the threshold is reached," Vareth said, "the sleeper will wake, and it will do what the hollow always does. It will silence the galaxy. It will kill every advanced species. It will leave only the primitives, only the quiet ones, only those too weak to matter." Jiang was crying. She didn't notice. "What about the third one?" The hologram flickered again. Static. Interference. As if Vareth was hesitating. "The third entity vanished 10,000 years ago. We don't know where it went. We don't know why it left. But before it disappeared, it sent a message." The words appeared in the air. Ancient Karathi symbols that somehow translated themselves into human language. "I will remember." Silence filled the chamber. "What does that mean?" Minho asked. Nobody answered. Vareth's image reappeared. "Older now, tired, dying. We have calculated the threshold," he said. "The moment when the galaxy becomes loud enough to wake the sleeper. It happens when the combined FTL signatures of all species exceed a certain limit. When we fell, the galaxy was halfway there. The surviving civilizations learned to be quiet. They reduced their travel. They limited their expansion. They bought themselves time. The numbers appeared. Charts, graphs, calculations. But time is running out. Species forget. They grow careless. They build more ships, travel more often, make more noise. Eventually, the threshold will be reached. And when it is, the image of the sleeper appeared. Larger than the first entity. Larger than worlds. A shadow at the heart of the galaxy, waiting to wake. Everything ends. Yoonji was working at one of the consoles, pulling data, running numbers. Her face went pale. "Captain," she said, "I've updated their calculations with current data. The expansion of the collective, the number of ships, the FTL traffic, and the threshold will be reached in 6 months." The words hung in the air. 6 months. Half a year. Nothing. "The collective doesn't know," Do-hyun said slowly. "They have no idea what's coming. Even if we told them, would they believe us?" Hannah asked. "We're humans. We're nothing. They laugh at us. They ignore us. Why would they listen to a warning about ancient monsters and sleeping gods? Because we have proof." Do-hyun gestured at the archive around them. "We have the Karathi records. We have the calculations. We have everything they need to know." "And what do we tell them to do?" Suri asked. "Stop traveling? Stop building ships? Stop being a civilization?" "They won't do it. They can't do it." Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the hologram of Vareth, the ancient commander who had tried so hard and failed so completely. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "We show them what's coming, and we let them decide. It's not our choice to make. It's theirs." Ji-young wiped her eyes. "What if they choose wrong? Then at least they chose." Do-hyun turned to face his crew. "That's all anyone can do. Face the truth. Make a choice. Live with the consequences. That's what it means to be alive. That's what it means to be human." A rumble shook the archive. Dust fell from the ceiling. Something was moving outside. Tae-sung checked his scanner. His face went gray. "Captain, the first entity, the one that patrols the corridor. It's coming back. And this time, it's coming directly toward us. It found us? No, I don't think so. But it's doing a sweep of the area. Systematic. Thorough." He paused. "It will find us in about 3 hours. 3 hours. That was all the time they had. Download everything," Do-hyun ordered. "Every record. Every file. Every piece of data in this archive. We're taking it all. And then? Then we run." He looked at his crew. His people. His responsibility. "We came here to find answers. We found them. Now we have to get them home. Whatever it takes." The crew moved with purpose. 3 hours to download 10,000 years of knowledge. 3 hours to copy the last will of a dead civilization. 3 hours before something older than humanity came to silence them forever. Somewhere in the darkness of the corridor, the hollow was moving. It didn't know the humans were there. It didn't care about them. But it would. Because Park Do-hyun was going to make sure the galaxy heard what the Karathi had to say, even if it killed him. The hollow came for them at the worst possible moment. The download was at 92% when the sensors screamed. Entity 1, the monster that patrolled the Forbidden's corridor, had changed course. It was no longer sweeping the area in random patterns. It was moving with purpose. Moving toward the asteroid. Moving toward them. 8% left. Specialist Choi Yoonji reported, her voice tight. "I need 4 more minutes. We don't have 4 minutes." Lieutenant Yoon Hana was at the tactical station, watching the approaching nightmare on her screen. "That thing is accelerating. It'll be on top of us in 3. Captain Park Do-hyun made a decision. Taesun, can you buy us time? Engineer Kwon Taesun was already moving. Maybe. The asteroid has some old defense systems. Karathi tech. I don't know if they still work, but I can try to activate them. Do it. Taesun ran. Do-hyun watched the screen. The entity was 400 kilometers long. It moved like a living thing, twisting through space, its surface rippling with patterns that almost looked like thoughts. It was beautiful in a terrible way. A god of silence, hunting through the darkness. 95%, Yoonji said. The entity reached the outer edge of the asteroid field surrounding the archive. It paused, scanned, searching for something. It knows something is here, Dr. Beek-Suri said quietly. It can feel us. 97%. The asteroid's defense systems activated. Old weapons. Karathi weapons. Energy beams lanced out from hidden platforms, striking the entity. The light was blinding Dodd when it faded. The entity was undamaged, completely untouched. But now it knew exactly where they were. Dodd. It screamed. The sound was not sound. It was something else. Something that bypassed the ears and went directly into the brain. Every human on the ship grabbed their head. Some fell. Some screamed back. The pain was beyond anything Taeyin had ever felt, and then it stopped. 100%. Yoonji shouted. We have everything. Go! The persistence launched from the docking bay like a bullet. Behind them, the entity crashed into the asteroid, tearing through rock and metal, destroying the archive that had survived for 10,000 years. The last words of the Karathi were in their computer. Now they just had to survive long enough to share them. Full burn. Do-hyun ordered. We can't use FTL. Navigator Im Jeong shouted back. If we light up our FTL drive, that thing will lock onto us instantly. Then we run the old way. Conventional engines. Maximum thrust. That's going to take weeks to get out of the corridor. Then it's going to be a long few weeks. The entity emerged from the ruins of the asteroid. It was angry now. They could feel it. A cold rage that filled the space around them like pressure. It began to follow. The chase lasted 3 days. 3 days of no FTL. 3 days of running dark, using only the minimum power needed to keep the engines firing. 3 days of watching the entity get closer and closer, hour by hour, like death walking slowly across a room. They couldn't use weapons. Weapons were energy. Energy was noise. Noise meant death. They couldn't send messages. Communication was noise. They couldn't even talk loudly. The crew whispered to each other in the darkness. They ate cold rations. They slept in shifts of 2 hours. Too afraid to rest longer, Tae-sung kept the ship alive through miracles and spite. When the engine coupling cracked, he welded it back together with parts from the coffee maker. When the life support fluctuated, he rewired the whole system using cables from the lighting grid. When Do-hyun asked him how he was doing, he just laughed. I always wanted to see if I could keep a ship running with nothing but duct tape and bad language, he said. Now I'm finding out. On the second day, Hana came to Do-hyun with a plan. The Karishi ship, she said. The Whisper of Stars, it's still out there. Still dead. Still full of energy cells. What are you thinking? We go back. We overload the reactor. Create a massive energy signature. The entity won't be able to resist. It'll go for the easy prey. That's suicide. Whoever goes there won't make it back. It's not suicide if we're fast enough. Hana's eyes were hard. I can do it. Give me Minho and a small team. We fly there in the shuttle, set the overload, and get back before the entity reaches the signal. Don shook his head. I won't order anyone to take that risk. You don't have to order. Sergeant Han Minho stepped forward. He'd been listening. I volunteer. So do I, said Jeong. Me too, said Yunji. Do-Yun looked at his crew. These people who had been mocked by the galaxy. These people who were supposed to be weak and insignificant. They were volunteering to risk their lives to save everyone else. We're human, Hana said simply. This is what we do. The shuttle launched 4 hours later. Hana, Minho, Ji-young, and Yunji. 4 humans flying toward death to buy time for life. Do-Hyun watched them go. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. The Whisper of Stars was exactly where they had left it. Dead. Cold. Waiting. The team boarded and moved fast. They knew the layout from their first visit. They knew where the reactor was. They knew what needed to be done. Yunji set up the overload. 15 minutes to detonation. Let's go, Hana said. They ran back to the shuttle. Behind them, the reactor began to build power. Energy surged through the dead ship, lighting up systems that had been dark for days. The signal was enormous, bright, loud. The entity noticed that it turned, changed course, abandoned its pursuit of the persistence, and began moving toward the Whisper of Stars instead. Toward the noise. Toward the prey. It's working! Ji-young shouted from the shuttle sensors. It's going for the Karishi ship. Move! Hana pushed the engines to maximum. The shuttle raced away from the dead ship, away from the approaching god. They almost made it. The entity reached the Whisper of Stars just as the reactor reached critical. The explosion was enormous. A star of light in the darkness. Energy enough to blind sensors across half the corridor. The shockwave caught the shuttle, threw it spinning through space. Systems failed. Lights flickered. For a terrible moment, there was only chaos. Then silence. Then Yunji's voice, weak but alive. We made it. We're alive. The persistence found them an hour later, drifting, damaged, but alive. Do-Hyun met them at the airlock. He didn't say anything. He just hugged Hana, then Minho, then Ji-young, then Yunji. Captain, Hana said. That's not very professional. I don't care. Behind them, the entity had finished consuming the Karishi ship. Now it turned back toward the direction the persistence had gone. But the shuttle had confused it. The explosion had overwhelmed its sensors. It didn't know where the humans were anymore. It began searching. Randomly. Slowly. They had time. Get us out of the corridor, Do-Yun ordered. Full burn. Don't stop for anything. The persistence limped toward freedom. Behind them, the entity searched the darkness, patient and eternal. Just before they crossed out of the forbidden corridor, the entity spoke. Its voice filled every speaker on the ship. Filled every mind. Filled every thought. Curious, it said. New species, primitive, irrelevant. You will be catalogued and forgotten. Do-Hyun walked to the communications console. He activated the broadcast. We've been underestimated before, he said quietly. We're still here. The entity was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again. Tell the others. Tell them what wakes. The connection ended. The persistence crossed out of the forbidden corridor. Stars appeared. Normal stars. Safe stars. Space that wasn't filled with ancient monsters and dead civilizations. They had made it. Taesung collapsed against the wall. Never again. Never, never again. Hana sat down next to him. Until the next time. There isn't going to be a next time. There's always a next time. That's what being human means. Do-Hyun looked out at the stars. Somewhere behind them, the entity waited. Somewhere ahead, the collective waited. Somewhere in between, humanity waited, not knowing that everything was about to change. Set course for the collective capital, he said. We have a message to deliver. The ship turned toward the center of the galaxy, toward the place where the sleeper waited, toward the beings who had mocked humanity and dismissed them as nothing. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The Persistence arrived at the collective capital looking like a ghost ship. Half the hull was scorched. One engine was completely dead. The life support made a sound that Taizong described as somewhere between crying and giving up. But they were alive. And they had the truth. Captain Park Do-hyun requested an emergency meeting with the collective council. He was denied. Humans didn't have the authority. Humans were insignificant. Humans needed to learn their place. Lieutenant Yoon Hana had a different idea. If they won't listen privately, she said, they'll listen publicly. She broadcast the Karathi recordings on every open channel in the system. Every ship. Every station. Every planet. The final words of Commander Vareth echoed across the galaxy. The warning that had been buried for 10,000 years was finally heard. Within hours, panic spread. Within days, the council was forced to meet. The council chamber was enormous. A sphere of floating platforms, each holding representatives of different species. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. The most powerful beings in the galaxy, all gathered in one place. And at the center, alone on a small platform, stood one human. Commander Rothik of the Velrith was there. His stone-gray face was unreadable, but Do-hyun remembered his words from their first meeting. You exist because the galaxy has not yet bothered to notice you. Now the galaxy was noticing. The eldest of the Koreshi spoke first. Her name was lost to time. She simply called herself the Elder. She had lived for 3,000 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had never seen anything like this. Captain Park, she said, her telepathic voice filling every mind. You have brought us evidence of an extinction-level threat. You have shown us recordings that our own scientists died trying to obtain. You violated collective law by entering the Forbidden's corridor. Yes, Do-hyun said. Why? Because someone was asking for help. And nobody else was listening. The chamber was silent. The distress signal from our science vessel, the Elder continued. We heard it. We chose not to respond. We were afraid. I know. And yet, you went anyway. Your species is the youngest, the weakest, the most primitive. You had everything to lose. Do-hyun looked at her. At all of them. The powerful, the ancient, the afraid. We didn't have anything to lose, he said. We barely have anything at all. Our ships are old. Our technology is outdated. You gave us patrol routes that meant nothing and laughed at us behind our backs. He paused. We went because that's who we are. When someone needs help, we try to help. Even if it's dangerous. Even if it's stupid. Even if nobody thanks us. Why? Because we remember what it felt like to need help and have nobody come. The words hung in the air. Rothik stood. The Velrith commander who had mocked humanity. Who had called them bacteria. Who had promised them that they would be forgotten. I owe you an apology, he said. His voice was rough. Unused to these words. I said humans existed because the galaxy had not noticed you. I was wrong. The galaxy noticed. We just chose not to see. I don't need an apology, Do-hyun said. I need you to listen. We're listening. Specialist Choi Yoonji stepped forward. She had spent the entire journey home analyzing the Karathi data, running the numbers, confirming the timeline. The threshold will be reached in 5 months and 23 days, she said. When it is, the entity at the galactic core will wake. Based on the Karathi records, it will then begin systematically destroying every FTL-capable species in the galaxy. The process will take approximately 1 standard year. 1 year. 1 year to end everything. What can we do? Someone asked. Reduce FTL activity by 60%, Yoonji said. Immediately. Across the entire collective. This will delay the threshold by decades. Centuries, if maintained. The reaction was immediate. Protests, objections, impossible. The economy would collapse. Species would starve. Wars would start. Rothak silenced them with a roar. "Listen to yourselves," he snarled. "You're arguing about economics while extinction approaches. The humans risked their lives to bring us this warning. The least we can do is consider it." The elder raised her hand. The chamber fell silent. "Captain Park," she said, "your species is new to the stars. You have not seen what we have seen. The rise and fall of civilizations. The endless cycles of war and peace. You do not understand how difficult it is to change." "You're right," Da-Hyun said. "I don't, but I understand something else." "What?" "I understand what it means to survive against impossible odds. Humans were not supposed to exist. Our planet tried to kill us with ice ages and plagues and volcanoes. We survived. We fought wars that should have ended us. We survived. We went to worlds where we couldn't breathe and built homes anyway. We survived." He looked around the chamber, at the ancient species, at the powerful species, at the species who had forgotten what it meant to struggle. "You want to know why we answered that distress call? Why we went into the Forbidden's corridor? Why we're standing here now, trying to save a galaxy that thinks we're nothing?" He paused, because survival isn't about being strong. It's about refusing to give up. It's about getting up every time you fall. It's about getting up every time you fall. It's about finding a way when there isn't one. You've forgotten that. You've been powerful for so long that you've forgotten what it means to fight for your life. He took a breath. We haven't forgotten. We never will. The chamber was silent. Then, slowly, the elder nodded. "The humans have given us a gift," she said. "Not just a warning. Not just the data. They have reminded us what it means to be alive." She turned to the assembled representatives. "I call for a vote. Emergency measures to reduce FTL activity. All in favor." The vote was not unanimous, but it was enough. The collective began to change. Slowly, painfully, but it changed. Trade routes were restructured. Travel was limited. Species that had not cooperated in centuries were forced to work together. And at the heart of it all, a small human ship called the Persistence sat in a dock, finally getting the repairs it had needed for months. 6 months later, the threshold was still not reached. The sleeper at the galactic core continued to dream. The galaxy remained quiet. Do-hyun stood in his quarters aboard the newly commissioned HSS Defiance. It was a better ship, faster, stronger. Still nothing compared to the vessels of other species, but it was theirs. A message arrived on his console. A transmission from beyond the galactic rim. From somewhere in the infinite darkness between galaxies. 2 words. Remembered you. Entity 3. The one that had vanished 10,000 years ago. The one that had said, "I will remember." It had kept its promise. Do-hyun read the message. He set down the datapad. He looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, something ancient and terrible was watching. Something that had remembered humanity from a single encounter in the darkness. Something that was waiting. For what? He didn't know. Maybe nobody did. But he knew one thing. Whatever came next, humanity would face it the same way they had faced everything else. Together. Stubborn. Refusing to quit. He picked up the datapad again. Typed a response. It was short. Just 1 word. Good. He sent it into the void. Then he turned and walked to the bridge where his crew was waiting. Where the stars were calling. Where the galaxy, for all its ancient races and its sleeping gods and its impossible odds, was just a little bit safer. Because a handful of humans had refused to be quiet They said humans were weak. They were right. They said humans didn't matter. They were wrong. The galaxy had learned something in those 6 months. Something that the Karathi had known. Something that the Hollow feared. Strength wasn't about power. It wasn't about technology. It wasn't about how loud you could scream into the darkness. It was about what you did when the darkness screamed back. Humans kept going. Always. No matter what. And that, in the end, was enough. The Defiance jumped to TL, carrying its crew toward whatever came next. Behind them, the galaxy hummed with quiet activity. Ahead of them, the unknown waited. Park Do-hyun smiled. It was going to be an interesting future.